Äntligen, finally! Yes, kom Annika. Du får en applås. Äntligen får vi dra igång. Äntligen får vi träffas igen. Finally we get to get started, but even more better, we get to meet each other. Many heartful greetings from people who hasn't seen each other for a long time. It's nice to be back in this context. My name is Fredrik Burling and I've been asked to be the master of ceremony of the conferencier for this evening. Jag heter Fredrik Berling och ni som är härifrån Sverige, ni kanske känner igen mig från någon konferens någonstans eller TV någonstans. Men idag är jag här och det känns väldigt ärfyllt. Det känns riktigt och det känns spännande och en av de där kvällarna som jag verkligen inte ville missa. Vi fick ju precis reda på att det är en ganska stor del som är engelsktalande här. Och därför kommer vi i alla fall hoppa, men försöka prata så mycket engelska som möjligt, men ibland blir det lite hoppande. So bear with us if we're not speaking perfect English. So we just found out that quite a few of you are English speaking, so we will be turning to English the best way we can. Eller hur Alex?
Yes.
Ja, Alex, generalsekreterare för Amazon Watch Sverige, director of Amazon Watch Sweden. So I'm not the one that officially is going to say welcome to the audience here. It's you. So take it away.
Yes. Welcome. Welcome. It was a long wait. By wait, I mean 2 years, because we were supposed to have this in 2020, so it got delayed a bit. But finally, we can have this event.
Yes. You and I talked, I think, 2 years ago. We said, now we're going to do it. And finally, we're here. So I guess that most of you are aware of Amazon Watch and what you do. But for those of us who don't know, please tell us a little bit about this organization.
So Amazon Watch is an NGO, an organization that works to support indigenous rights and indigenous voices. And by aiding them achieving human rights, we indirectly protect the biodiversity. Because if indigenous peoples have their rights to their territories, the territories become protected.
And we're talking about indigenous peoples all over the world.
Yes, we started with the Amazon, which is why we call it Amazon Watch. But we are allied with all indigenous people's struggles across the globe because they're all very similar. You can almost just exchange the name of the mine or the area, but the actual problem and the human rights violations are equal everywhere. So it's very similar. That's why we support the struggle across the globe.
Mm-hmm. For us here in Sweden, it's been a very long tradition to have interest in the indigenous people of Turtle Island or North American indigenous peoples. But the last few years we've started to widen that perspective and also listen more to the voices of South America and finally also listen to the voices of our own indigenous peoples, the Sapi people. What do you think about that?
That's very good. Hopefully that's a result of some of our work, but also other organizations who try to help the indigenous people raise their voices. And they also have their own organizations as well that we are always allied with.
Mm. All right. So Alex, what are you looking forward this evening?
To listen to the indigenous voices.
Mm. Good. Good. Thank you, Alex, for putting this evening together. So I would like to introduce now a person for us in Sweden, very well known. She's an author, she's a poet, she's a singer-songwriter and also an actress. And not the least, she is an ambassador for Amazon Watch Sweden. So she will give the welcome speech, Regina Lund.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for being here. It's amazing that you're all here. And we had to change from Swedish to English in the last second because this became so popular, and I'm so thankful and glad that you're all here. It's overwhelming, actually. So thank you. We're all indigenous people to the planet Earth. The highest good for our planet. Who has the answer? The highest good for our planet. Who has the answer? When you know, you know. But it's not until you have the whole picture that you know what it's really about. When we are born, we know so much already. Then we need to be reminded again and again and again of what we already know. We are here tonight to remind each other. Everything is interconnected. Everything is a unity of interconnectedness. It's really important that you all are here. It's really, really important. You are important. Every single little one of you. Every cell in your body. Because the lung of the earth needs you. Every cell in here is needed to make the rainforest flourish and prosper. Not only survive, but flourish and prosper in freedom. All life, in order to be alive in full bloom, needs freedom to grow. With wilderness, with water, fresh air, love and nourishment, and knowledge. With that, we can make her not only alive, but to be alive. So let's love bomb the rainforest tonight. Life is a game. So let's play it. Because you are all very, very, very important in this game. So let's press play. Have a beautiful evening, and thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you, Regina.
Let's see if I can make myself heard. Let's see if that works better.
No, yes, now. Okay, good. Thank you, Regina. We're moving on in the program. We're going to meet Patricia Gualinga. Please join me on stage, and also Nina, who will be interpreter at this time. Oh, they will be Helena. Yes, but Patricia is coming on stage, right?
Yes.
Okay. And who is accompanying Patricia? Vem kommer att tolka Patricia? Give her a warm applause. That's a bit high, isn't it? Okay. So I'd like to introduce you. For those of you who don't know, you are... hur säger man urfolk på engelska? Är det indigenous? Okay, indigenous people. Yes. Belonging to the Quechua from the community of Sarayaco in the Ecuadorian Amazon. She has actually just recently received the Olof Palme Prize for her fight for not only her own people but all the indigenous peoples, which again is also a fight, as Alex told us earlier, for the nature and for sustainability and the biodiversity. It's a great honor to have you here.
Buenas noches. Muchísimas gracias por la invitación.
Good evening. Thank you so much for this invitation.
Esta vez quiero hablarles específicamente desde la Amazonía. Una Amazonía que es el pulmón del mundo, que es una de las fuentes de agua dulce más importantes del planeta. De cada 8 vasos de agua que toman, 1 puede ser de la Amazonía, y que es fuente de biodiversidad, culturas milenarias.
This time, I want to greet you deep from the Amazon, from what is called the lungs of the world, from one of the biggest water sources of the world. 1 in every 8th cup of water you drink might come even from the Amazon, from where we preserve biodiversity and have a diversity of a lot of cultures.
Pero también una Amazonía agredida, una Amazonía violentada, una Amazonía destruida en algunas partes, una Amazonía en peligro, una Amazonía a la que las fuerzas coloniales de las transnacionales, como petróleo, minería, industrias alimenticias, mega industrias, están intentando destruirla.
But also from an Amazon that has been violented, that has been hurt, that is in danger, where colonial forces have come with with various industries like oil, like mining, like the agro industry, and is trying to hurt the Amazon.
Y muchos pueblos indígenas que están aquí, estoy segura que se identifican con este tipo de historias de destrucción que viene desde una mentalidad occidental que justifica toda violación de derechos económicamente, con justificaciones económicas.
And I'm certain that a lot of indigenous people, if not everyone, all indigenous people can identify with the issues that I'm talking about. It comes from a Western way of thinking where they put economic growth before people.
Tantos años los pueblos indígenas hemos estado advirtiendo el peligro que representa para la supervivencia del ser humano, para la tierra, para todos, el que avancen a pasos agigantados con esta destrucción.
Indigenous people have been warning for what will be coming. We have been warning that this will be a threat to our survival. It will be a threat to the planet if we continue like this.
Y siempre nos dijeron que no es verdad, que somos románticos, que no somos realistas, que la ciencia no dice eso, y que si queremos vivir bien, tenemos que destruir, porque la naturaleza es para explotar. ¿Cuán equivocada era esa teoría?
But they always said that we weren't telling the truth, that we were liars, that we were making things up. They were saying that we were not being realistic. But how wrong they were when they said that they could do this to nature.
Toda esta visión nos ha puesto en un grave peligro a la humanidad. Un grave peligro a tal punto que estamos en un punto de ya no retorno.
This vision and this way of seeing life has put us in danger. It has gone as far as to go to a point where there is almost no return.
Y recién muchos científicos empiezan a hablar casi como los indígenas, porque no igual, porque recién, tardando tantos años, empiezan a demostrar científicamente que todo lo que nosotros dijimos era verdad.
And now, just recently, finally, the scientific world, the scientists, are starting to talk about the things that indigenous people have been talking about. But they're not exactly talking about it in the way as we've been doing it, but it's a step. And now they're finally finding proof for what we've been saying for years and years.
Pero los gobiernos tampoco hacen caso a los científicos, no hacen caso a los indígenas, siguen con su visión expansionista, apostando toda la economía y el destino en destrucción e industrias extractivas.
But the governments are not listening. They're still not listening. They're not listening to the scientific world, to the scientists, and they're not listening to indigenous people, and they are betting on the destruction of this world.
Todas estas discusiones sobre el clima, el medio ambiente, Puede ser hasta ahora porque todavía los pueblos indígenas, poniéndonos en la primera línea de lucha, hemos defendido la naturaleza y los recursos que en ella hay. Gracias a eso hay bosques, gracias a los pueblos indígenas hay Amazonía, gracias a eso pueden hablar de naturaleza, porque si solo fuera por ellos, ya lo hubieran terminado destruyendo.
And the reason why we're even having the discussions that we're having today about climate is because indigenous people have actually put our own bodies on the front line to protect the nature that we're today talking about. We wouldn't be able to even be talking about this if it wasn't for indigenous people. Thanks to indigenous people, we have forests, we have biodiversity, and this would not have been happening without indigenous people.
Nosotros, algunas de aquí que estamos, venimos del pueblo quichua de Sarayaco en la Amazonía de Ecuador.
We, a couple of us that are here, we come from the Quichua people of Sarayaco in the Ecuadorian Amazon.
Esta visión mi pueblo lo tiene bien arraigado y por eso hemos luchado fuertemente, hasta incluso con nuestros cuerpos expulsando a la empresa petrolera en el 2003 y después llevándolo al Estado ecuatoriano a la Corte Interamericana, donde la Corte falló a favor de Sarayaco.
But my community is a community of vision, with a strong vision, and this is why we have been fighting, including sometimes putting our own bodies on the line. And therefore, my community kicked out the oil companies out of our territories and took the Ecuadorian government to court, to international court.
Pero no ha sido suficiente ganarles y demostrarles a nivel internacional que violentaron derechos. Hace falta mucho más. Hace falta que entiendan todo lo que estamos queriendo decir.
But it's not enough just taking them to court. We actually need to make them understand why we're doing this and the importance of nature.
Por eso Sarayaku ha empezado a lanzar una idea visionaria, una propuesta que le hemos llamado selva viviente o Causaxacha.
That's why my community has decided to share our vision, which is called Causaxacha, and to English it's translated as the living forest.
Y para poder explicar, porque es una visión muy profunda, a una mente racional, lo hemos resumido en una frase, que es la búsqueda de un reconocimiento de que la naturaleza, la tierra, es un ser vivo, consciente, igual que todos nosotros, y por lo tanto es sujeto de derechos.
To be able to explain this, because this is something that is really hard to explain and it's really hard to grasp and understand, this is how we're trying to explain it. Nature and the forest is a being, and therefore this being also has rights.
Pero esto es mucho más profundo que esa palabra. Esto es mucho más complejo que esta simple palabra. ¿Por qué? Porque nace desde la visión profunda de nuestros sabios ancianos. Es la relación más profunda que puede tener el ser humano con la naturaleza. Es la comprensión más sagrada de los pueblos indígenas que lo hemos compartido al mundo para ver si les llega al corazón y así por fin empiezan a reaccionar y tomar decisiones adecuadas.
But this goes much deeper than the words I just shared with you. It's the most profound relationship to nature. It's the most sacred understanding of what nature is. And we've chosen to share this because maybe if they can hear this, they can understand that we need to protect the planet.
En la escuela, en las universidades, nos hablan de las ciencias naturales, las ciencias políticas, las ciencias sociales. Pero con esta visión, hasta eso tendría que cambiar.
In schools, they teach us social sciences, different types of sciences, but even if we teach them this, even that science would need to change.
Lo hemos puesto viviente porque es viviente literalmente. No es una visión muy holística que está ajena a la realidad. Esta es la visión más real que puede existir. Es viviente porque mucho más allá de nosotros, de los árboles a las plantas, nosotros sabemos que hay seres protectores de la naturaleza que la ciencia no los ha logrado reconocer ni identificar.
And we call it being because it is the most real thing that exists. It's not some holistic idea, it is real. These are beings, these are protective beings that live in the forest.
Cuya función de estos seres es regenerar los bosques y espacios sagrados. La destrucción de estos espacios vivientes donde se regenera y fluye la vida conectándose a otros ecosistemas importantes del mundo hace que haya destrucción.
Okay, I remember. Sorry, that's my bad. And these beings make sure that we can regenerate the places that have been harmed and regenerate sacred places for us that is vital for the entire ecosystem and for this entire planet.
El ser humano ha cortado estos hilos. Cuando es destruido con mega empresas extractivas de contaminación y destrucción, ha cortado los hilos que nos conectaban, que nosotros no lo vemos así nomás, que hay que tener una visión muy desarrollada para verlo. ¿Y qué ha ocasionado? Una crisis. Una crisis que científicamente le dicen crisis climática, que nos está afectando a nosotros los pueblos indígenas, pero ya no solo a los pueblos indígenas. Está afectando a Europa, como Alemania, Bélgica, está afectando a Estados Unidos, Canadá y otras partes del mundo, para que vean cómo estamos conectados.
We have cut the connection that we have to nature, to these beings. We have done it by bringing all the industries onto our territories, by polluting their natural habitats. And this is something that you cannot see with just your bare eyes. You have to have a very developed consciousness to be able to understand this. And this, in the scientific world, or in the scientific words, it is translated as the climate crisis. And the climate crisis is now affecting indigenous people, and we've been living with those consequences. But it's not just affecting indigenous people. It's affecting every single one on this planet. It's affecting Europe, it's affecting every continent on this planet.
Y eso nos hace ver que estamos tan conectados que no podemos decir, oh, los pobres indígenas que luchan, están siendo violentados sus derechos, solo solidaricemos. Eso nos involucra a todos en esta lucha por la protección de la Amazonía, por la protección de Borneos, por la protección de cualquier lugar o de los Ames acá que están luchando contra la minería en Galo. De ellos, porque todos estamos conectados y si no nos apoyamos, estamos apoyando el desequilibrio.
And this only shows how connected and interconnected we are. And that means that it's not just about showing solidarity, but it's also about taking action together. But what also shows how much we are connected is, for example, what is happening to the Sami people here in Sweden, up in Gallok. We can see how the same thing that happened in the Amazon happened here, and that it's the responsibility of all of us.
Yo siempre digo, es momento de unidad. Tenemos que dejar nuestras particularidades. Tenemos que salir de nuestro confort. Porque no tenemos confianza en las discusiones de los gobiernos. Ya que no están tomando decisiones que realmente sean serias y que empiecen a actuar. Entonces nos toca a nosotros, la otra parte que conocemos esto.
I always say this, that this is the time for unity and for coming together. We need to leave our differences, leave our comfort zones, because we can no longer trust in the governments. Because this is the responsibility of all of us.
Porque si en las discusiones no incluyen, como debe ser, la participación de los pueblos indígenas, la visión de los pueblos indígenas, los planes de vida de los pueblos indígenas, esas discusiones no van a tener resultado.
Because if they don't include us, if we're not participating in these processes, if they don't include our visions in these big discussions, they're never going to find the solution.
Entonces, ¿qué hacemos? Empecemos a actuar. Olvidemos nuestras diferencias, ideales de religión, posiblemente de cultura, sesgos sociales, todo, para empezar a actuar desde nuestras casas, a presionar a los gobiernos, a presionar a las industrias, a desinvertir.
So what do we do now? We take action. We leave behind our differences. We may have cultural differences, difference in religion, come from different socioeconomic backgrounds, but there is no time for that anymore.
Y si alguien está en la posibilidad de apoyar propuestas como la de Sarayaku. Selva Viviente es una propuesta muy original. Ahora vemos que han puesto una palabrita que dice Selva Viviente ahí en la cumbre, donde están los 50 años allá. Pero no queremos que solo quede una palabra como adorno, sino que realmente entiendan lo que eso significa.
So if any of you have the position to support or to take action or to support a proposal like the Kausaksacha proposal, the Living Forest proposal, do it. We have now seen that Kausaksacha has actually been included on the Stockholm Plus 50 program, but we don't want it to just be there as a pretty word. We actually need it to be implemented in policies and in society.
Sarayaku es 1.350 personas en una extensión territorial de 135.000 hectáreas. Si vemos numéricamente, ni siquiera es una escuela de acá de Estocolmo.
My community, Sarayaku, we're about 1,300 people, and we are the custodians of 135,000 hectares of land. And if you look at it in Stockholm here, 1,300 people don't even make up a school here. Doesn't make it even up a school here.
Y donde no queremos explotación petrolera, ni minera, ni apertura a carreteras, pero donde sí queremos que se aplique nuestra propia visión y nos dejen trabajar.
And this is a place where we don't want oil activities, mining activities. We don't want roads to come into our territories, but we do want our own vision to be respected and that we can live through that on our territories.
Les dije el número de Sarayaku, porque estas 1.350 personas logramos correr a la empresa, logramos un juicio internacional de 10 años y una sentencia, y nos convertimos en un símbolo de resistencia, creando jurisprudencia para otros pueblos del continente.
I mentioned how many people we were in the community. 1,300 people were able to kick out the oil companies from our territories and taking them to international court. And we became a symbol of what resistance looks like.
Yo me pregunto, ¿qué podríamos hacer todos? ¿Cuántos ciudadanos estamos preocupados de lo que está pasando? Si un pueblo pequeño, sin instrumentos de comunicación fáciles, sin acceso a carreteras, con su sola voluntad y decisión de defender la naturaleza, logró esto, ¿qué podemos hacer todos juntos? Yo creo que podríamos hacer tantas cosas. Solo es cuestión de atrevernos y no quedarnos en nuestro confort. Así que salgamos del confort y hagamos que se respeten los derechos y defender nuestra casa común, que es la madre tierra.
So I asked myself, what could we all do together? If my community, that is such a small community, could create this, what if all of us came together?
Eso es lo que vengo a compartir con todos ustedes, nuestra lucha, nuestra experiencia y tratar de animar de que lo que pasa en la Amazonía también les afecta en cualquier parte del mundo y que nosotros luchamos por nuestros derechos, ¿sí? Por los derechos de los demás y también por los derechos de esos de los hijos de esos gobiernos que no quieren tomar las decisiones como deben hacer. Estamos luchando todos por el derecho a la vida en esta casa. Muchísimas gracias.
So I have come with this message from the Amazon to share about the fight, to share about what we fight for, to remind everyone that we're not just fighting for ourselves, but for everyone, including the children of the people that are doing this harm today. Give it a second. We are fighting for the right to life, and that is my message. That is what I've come to share with you all today, and thank you.
Short questions. So you told us a bit about what we should do and what we can do in order to help. For you, this is not a new fight. You've been fighting for a long time. You brought your government to the court. So do you feel now that you are being listened to more than before, or is it still? Do you feel the message is reaching out more now than when you started your fight?
Antes nos sentíamos bastante solos. Ahora veo que hay más gente preocupada, jóvenes, mujeres y gente de muchos lados, y eso es bastante. Solo que me preocupa que no avancemos mucho más de lo que queramos hacer.
Before no one supported us, we felt alone, but now we're seeing that more and more people are listening, especially young people have been showing up.
What has happened in the Sarayuka community has had an impact on many other peoples.
Sí, y un impacto positivo, porque ha logrado inspiración. Nuestros documentales, nuestras estrategias y experiencias han sido compartidos con otros pueblos, no solo de la Amazonía, sino desde otros lados, para que pudieran tener herramientas que les ayuden a luchar.
Yes, it has had a positive impact. Our documentaries, our experiences, our strategies have been shared with other communities so that they also can fight.
Además, una sentencia de una corte internacional es una jurisprudencia, por lo menos en todas las Américas, para utilizarlo en otros juicios. Y así lo han hecho otros países, indígenas de otros países.
But also because we took it to international court, this has created a legal precedent across Latin America and the American continent, and that we can see in other cases where other communities have used this to benefit their communities.
Okay. Thank you very much. Gracias. Thank you. Grazie. Thank you. Okej, jag försökte få upp Nina förut. Nu ska vi upp Nina och ett antal stolar. Vi ska köra panelsamtal. Man tänker så här, Nina, det heter ju flera som heter Kväll. Antingen är det ett väldigt vanligt namn, eller så tänker man, herregud, det är bara en familj som kämpar. Vi måste alla hjälpa till. Så att det inte bara är Kväll som kämpar för allas vår väl. Jag ska se också så Nina får en mikrofon. Jag tror att du ska ha min mikrofon, Nina, kanske. Eller kan vi få ett headset till Nina? Har vi något extra headset?
Det finns bara ett tyvärr.
Det finns, ja, då får du ta mitt headset. Och så skickar du den. Eller hur kör den till... Ja, då har vi... Titta, nu kommer den. Nu alltså. Bra. Okej, det är alltså Nina Gvalenga som har samlat ungdomar som ska representera olika urfolk. So it's Nina Golenga who has gathered some young people representing different indigenous peoples who will be giving us a panel discussion or rather conversation. I think you will have to hand over the microphone to you, it's Charlie's. So, do we have everyone on stage? Okay. So maybe I should also introduce you. You're an Earth and Territory Defender. Negualinga is also part of the Amazon Watch Sweden board. You've been fighting for a long time for the rights of the indigenous peoples and not the least for your own people in the Ecuadorian Amazons. And you're here tonight with some people who will inform us about the situation that you are in. So please, Nina. Prata på ska vi se. Om du pratar på ska den komma. Så ska den komma igång. Vi ska se. Jag ska hjälpa dig.
Okay. No, let me know when you hear me.
No.
Okay, good. My name is Nina Gualinga, and I'm Patricia's niece. So I'm also from the Quechua people of Sarayaco in the Ecuadorian Amazon. I have Swedish roots on my father's side, and I've been working with Amazon Watch for a few years now. And I'm going to be leading this panel discussion or conversation with indigenous youth from various countries and areas. And we also have, I guess, our youngest panelist here, my son, Tiam. He's 5 years old, so you might hear him. And in our communities, it's like this. Our children are with us in our meetings, our festivities, high-level assemblies. So I really want you all to embrace that. There is a child here, and it's part of it. So, yeah. And I'm gonna start by introducing everyone. On this panel, we actually had another person who was supposed to be here, but she is still at the Stockholm Plus 50 conference, so she wasn't able to make it in time. But I am sure that this is going to be a very interesting panel anyway. So we have Eriki Terena. You want to say hi? From the Terena people in Brazil, and he is an indigenous filmmaker, photographer, musician, and DJ. And he also yes, and he also works he's the co-founder of Media India, which is an indigenous platform for news and to share stories. And then we have Leo Serva from, he's Quechua from the Ecuadorian Amazon, from the Napo region. He is the founder of the Black Indigenous Liberation Movement and has also been spearheading the fight against mining in his ancestral lands. And then we have my sister, Helena Walinga, from the Quechua people of Sarayaco. She's the co-founder of Polluters Out. And she will also be sharing some perspectives here at the panel. And then we have Sara Vida Kokunen. Did I say that right? Yeah. She's the president of the Sami Youth Union, Sami Nora, here in Sweden. So I first wanted to start off by asking you all to share a little bit about where you come from and your home, and what it looks like, because I think that some people, or maybe most people here, don't know. So if you can start sharing a little bit, Eriki.
Okay. Aqui é Noé, de Eric Terena e Rainha de Meu. Sou Eric Terena, esse é meu idioma materno. Eu sou no Brasil, sou da aldeia Cachoeirinha, Mato Grosso do Sul, do bioma Pantanal.
Meu nome é Eric Terena, esse é o meu idioma. Sorry. My name is Eric Terena, this is my native language, and I'm from Cachoeirinha, from Mato Grosso do Sul state. Pantanal.
Bom, minha comunidade ela não está demarcada.
My community is not delimited.
E hoje a gente enfrenta muito a monocultura, as invasões também da pecuária e o avanço da urbanização ao redor das nossas comunidades.
So our community suffers a lot of problems with monoculture, with invasions, with urbanization, and so on, with farming.
Bom, nós somos 8.000 indígenas em uma comunidade e temos uma área de proteção onde sobrevivemos da agricultura familiar e também.
So we are 8,000 people in this community, and we are in this protected area.
E enfrentamos diariamente agrotóxicos, a invasão dos nossos territórios e também a falta de segurança alimentar onde vivemos.
Yeah, so we depend a lot on our agriculture, and we suffer a lot with agrochemicals and pollutants in our communities.
Mas por fim vivemos felizes e lutando por nossos direitos, junto com as nossas crianças, com os nossos idosos, com os nossos comunicadores, e sempre fortalecendo com outros povos indígenas, porque a aliança entre povos é o que nos fortalece hoje no Brasil.
So anyway, we have a very happy life with our children, with elderly, defending our rights, and with our communicators, and also having alliances, because this is what makes us strong together.
Thank you so much, Eriki, for sharing about your home. Leo, can you share us a little bit about where you come from and what's happening in your territory right now? And we can see a picture here, so maybe you can share something about that.
My home. I live actually 15 kilometers out from that picture. My community, the community of Serena, is a Quechua community. We're only 160 people in my community. We're a very small community. We're very close to the city. Indigenous people, we come in various sizes, different dimensions. Some closer to the cities, some other people deeper in the Amazon. But the main thing is that we are protecting our lands and our territories. Whatever we are, whomever we are, at the end of the day, being indigenous means that you are a protector of the land. You're the protector of the forest. And I feel like a lot of indigenous people do not have a choice. Like none of us have a choice. We'd rather defend our territories or not in the middle. And for us, extractive, the industrial complex system that we live in, this capitalist world, has made us become these protectors, because what the world wants is our resources, our natural resources. whether it's oil in the Amazon, whether it's mining, whether it's mining in here where the Sami people are, where our brothers and sisters in New Zealand are. Everywhere is the same thing. What is happening in my community is that during COVID, illegal miners came to our territory to do mining extractive activities. They poisoned the river. They took advantage of the COVID pandemic because a lot of families were starving. They didn't have any income or anything to eat, so they came with this fantasy of development. This fantasy of development that has brought us to the point of not going back, almost not going back if we don't do anything. That's what we're fighting in my community. We're currently fighting mining. We were fighting oil before, and we kicked them out. Just in February, we kicked them out. That was due to a lot of the process of organizing and seeing other people organizing across the Amazon. So that's why we're here to share our story and to let you know that we're doing our work there in the ground, and that we want you to do your work here up where you're consuming the goods coming from the Amazon.
Thank you so much, Leo. Helena, can you tell us a little bit about Sarajevo? Can you maybe share a little bit what it's like to live there?
Yeah, so both Patricia, Nina, and I come from the same community, so I think we're gonna try to complement each other here. But growing up there, we were surrounded by everything that was happening around us. What Patricia was talking about, the oil companies coming and taking the Ecuadorian government to court, and all of this was happening, when we were very young children. But in a way, we were able to continue life in the community, even though it changed a lot of things. It changed a lot of people had to leave, and it was a strange time in the community. Because there were no roads, we don't have roads there. You can only go there by canoe or an airplane. It's very geographically isolated. We still could continue our life in the rainforest. And we still have, clean drinking water coming from the creeks right behind our homes, right behind our houses. We still build our homes with leaves and the wood from the rainforest. We still have hunting practices, fishing practices. We still, grow our own food in our fields. And then we have this very strong and articulated organization and movement to protect the Amazon rainforest. So it's a very powerful but powerfully beautiful place where we're rich in the sense of having a lot of nature around us. It's pristine rainforest. Of those 135,000 hectares of land, most of it is pristine rainforest. We have, and then we have this, strength and a lot of leaders like my mother and like Patricia and other people in our community. And I think for me as a young person, those are the people and the surroundings that have shaped me and that have motivated me to walk in the same path as they have walked. And I think I'll leave it there. We'll go back to talking about that.
Yeah, thank you, Elena, for sharing. So, Indigenous people make up about 4 to 5% of the world's entire population, and about 25 to 30% of the world's land surface is actually on indigenous land. And on that land, we preserve around 85% of the entire world's biodiversity. And I now want to go from Brazil and Ecuador. I want to come back here to Sweden because we so often are eager in Sweden to talk about the things that are happening far away. But I think it's crucial to look what's happening here within the own country borders. So, Sara Elvira, please share with us about your home and what is happening there.
Yes, thank you. Well, I'm from the Swedish part of Sápmi, from Jokkmokk, and I will focus specifically on Jokkmokk. There, you maybe have heard about Gallok, the mining plants up there. Yeah, what to talk about that? Sweden, if I say so, today the Prime Minister had her speech at Stockholm Plus 50 and told how Sweden is going forward with the green transition and that everyone has to be included. But the thing is that we indigenous people are excluded and they don't listen on our voices and what we think. So now in March they approved that this mining process is going forward. And that I see is the biggest problem in Sweden, this green transition, that it isn't that green for everyone because we aren't included in that. Yeah, I don't know, I can have a presentation for hours to tell what's wrong with the Swedish politics.
Please share. I heard what the Prime Minister said about green mining, and I find it very disturbing that you can put green in front of something and then suddenly it becomes justified to violate indigenous people's rights and land and life. Do you want to share something about that as youth? What are you? How are you confronting this?
Yeah, the green mining. I mean, for us youth who actually are going to, it's about our future. It's about our future to give our ancestors' culture to our children. And today, I don't feel that it's something that the government is giving us. We talk a lot about human rights in Sweden and how the government is very good to criticize other countries for not respecting their human rights. But the thing is that indigenous rights, they are also human rights because it's about our lives. So I really want Sweden to actually look what happens in its own country, because right now it doesn't give us youth a faith in future when our rights aren't being respected.
Thank you so much. We'll come back to this. But I wanted to ask you, Leo, because you have also been fighting against mining in your home in the Ecuadorian Amazon. And actually, the photos that you were seeing here, you see, it will come soon, but you will see, these like sort of pits of water and sand and stone. And then you see a beautiful river. That is the same place. The photo that you will see is the same place after and before mining. So can you share a little bit about the strategies that you have been using as Indigenous youth
in confronting and resisting the mining companies?
Yeah, I feel like, as Patricia said before, it's all about unifying and being together in this fight. Most of the time, when, for example, a mining company of an oil company comes, they're saying, "Oh, it's the indigenous people who have to fight, or because we have to fight for the defense of our lands, our territories, our culture itself." But we, like, one of the main strategies for us and the community was to let the people in the city know that you depend on the river. You know, this is not only our thing to fight. So we had to make an alliance with the people in the urban areas, because my community, and this happened like only 10 kilometers away from the city, and we live in the Amazon, and we live together with the people that have come to the Amazon. And I think the main strategy for us was to let them know that you also use the river. Yeah, and our state, our province is very touristic. I was like, where are we gonna live? What kind of transition do we want economically? What does mining represent? Because the government is saying, okay, mining will bring all this money, all this development, and we actually went to the tax system and said, okay, mining gave us in taxes in the Napo province in the last 5 years only $100,000. So this destruction, how much money is bringing into the government? Literally nothing compared to other industries such as like community tourism and rafting and kayaking, because our province has like so many rivers that are protected and pristine and clean water. I was like, okay, so this is what it represents to the state, and what it's gonna cost us is so much more. Like, for example, for each gram of gold extracted from the river, they need to use 5 gallons of water and 5 liters of mercury. And then imagine the amount of mercury that's going to be thrown into the river. So it's like and also the other strategy was like, okay, we coming together with the people in the urban areas, and also that made us stronger to come up to the government and say like, okay, because the whole system was corrupted. All the local politicians in our community, or the local elected politicians, were bought by the illegal miners. They all were paid off. The local governor of the province, the local mayor, everyone was involved. So we had to go with all the local agencies and the people in the fight, going to the national government. Okay, let's say, how are we going to do this operation? How are we going to tackle the mining? Because you're not even receiving any taxes from this. There's no money generating. And this also happens with the oil companies. The people who are making the money are the people who are opening the roads, the people who are installing the pipelines, the people that are making all along the supply chain line, who are corrupting, and they are the ones for making the money. For example, from the oil, when the oil was at $30 and it cost $35 to stock the oil, those $35 only go to the contractors, not to the people, not to the environment, not to the government, the contractors. So we as civil society should know where the money is going to. And we should know that if our land gets destroyed, in which land are we going to live? When COVID happened, we just started thinking about indigenous people and where the food is coming from, where the water is coming from, and that's why I was mesmerized that during COVID this was happening. It was like we didn't learn anything from what is happening. That's why we should be all more connected. For example, this year is a Stockholm plus 50, right? And it's to talk about the environment and what are we doing to mitigate and how are we going to accomplish those goals. And last year we were at COP, and if we indigenous people were not at COP, suggesting that they put on the resolution indigenous-based solutions because they wanted to say nature-based solutions. They're not going to be nature-based solutions if they're not indigenous-based solutions. And for us, it's like not because we want this only to be indigenous. For us, indigenous is to be indigenizing the population to the values that we have. It's not that you cannot be indigenous. We're just saying like trying to teach people to have the same values to respect the land, to protect the forest. That's why we want to put those words into the resolutions and combine our efforts. And that's why we're here sharing our stories.
Thank you, Leo. Yeah, as I was saying, indigenous people have been preserving and protecting forests, rivers, mountains, for the benefit of all of us. And in the recent few decades here in Sweden, the government has clear cut all old growth forests. There's a few protected areas left. There's a few places where there's still old forests, and many of these areas are actually being protected of the Sami people. So I wanted to ask you, what does climate justice and a just transition look like for you? What does climate justice look like and a just transition look like for you and your people?
I would say that climate justice, it's of course to have indigenous rights, because like I think it was Patricia who said that, without us being here we wouldn't have a nature, because right now the government they are saving the nature by destroying the nature.
Thank you. I think that's very powerful. Climate justice means respecting indigenous rights. And I want to go to you, Eriki. Can you share us about, because it's a very pressing time right now in Brazil, and it has been for a few years with your current government, Bolsonaro, who is completely against indigenous people and indigenous rights and land. What are the strategies that you, as indigenous youth, are using to confront this racist narrative and to confront extractive industries?
Bom, permita falar em português, eu entendi, mas é difícil.
Allow me. Sorry. Hello.
Excuse me.
I understand the question, but I want to speak in Portuguese better.
Bom, vamos lá. É muito difícil falar sobre mudança climática e não falar sobre justiça climática, principalmente no Brasil.
It's very difficult to talk about climate change without talking about climate justice, especially in Brazil.
Desde o período da invasão do Brasil, chamado por colonização, os povos indígenas vêm enfrentando diversas ameaças.
Since the invasion or colonization of Brazil, the indigenous populations are suffering a lot of threats.
E isso não foi diferente nos últimos anos com o governo Bolsonaro.
And this was not different last years with government of Bolsonaro.
A situação piorou ainda mais com projetos de leis que autorizavam garimpo em terras protegidas e em terras indígenas.
Yeah, it worsened the last years with laws and project of laws that would allow mining, for example, in indigenous communities and indigenous territories.
Muito de nossas lideranças foram criminalizados por defender seus territórios.
A lot of us were criminalized just to defend our territories.
Crianças morreram, mulheres morreram.
Children died and women died.
E hoje os jovens estão tentando buscar outras formas de lutar por nossos direitos dentro do Brasil.
And nowadays, young people, all of our community, are trying to find alternatives to fight for our rights.
Entre elas as universidades, entre elas estar dentro da política, entre elas também estar dentro das redes sociais globais, conectadas com outros povos indígenas, buscando esse fortalecimento em defesa do nosso território.
So the young people are finding ways in the universities, in policies, in social media, in international networks to fight for our territories.
Mas é importante lembrar que Bolsonaro não está forte pelo povo brasileiro, mas sim por conta de povos fora do Brasil que estão ajudando por conta do mercado internacional, por estar aí dialogando com outros parlamentares de outros países a fim de explorar os nossos territórios.
But it's important to know that Bolsonaro is not strong for us in our population. They are strong outside Brazil in this international market that they support to exploit Brazilian resources.
E como vocês podem nos ajudar? Existe um tratado chamado Tratado do Mercosul, que infelizmente não está regulamentado e mesmo que esteja, tem suas diretrizes possíveis de violação. E provavelmente o que vocês consomem na Europa tem sangue indígena porque é extraída de áreas ilegais.
So how can you help us? There is this Mercosur treaty, and that's there but it's not regulated. So what you consume here maybe is under our indigenous blood.
E para combater os governos, acho que todos os governos que enfrentam os nossos direitos, é importante lembrar que a nossa vida não se negocia.
And to fight for our rights, it's important to know that life is not negotiable.
Porque quando falamos sobre política, estamos entendendo que é importante ter voz dos povos indígenas.
So when you talk about politics, it's important to know that indigenous need to have their voice heard.
Como falamos da educação escolar, também temos que levar em consideração a nossa educação tradicional dentro das nossas comunidades.
And when you talk about education, it's important to talk about the education inside our communities.
Quando falamos também sobre saúde, precisamos falar sobre os nossos saberes tradicionais e cuidado com as nossas vidas.
When we talk about health, we should talk about our traditional health as well.
Sim. E por fim, é importante lembrar que vocês também podem colaborar com a gente. Todos nós fazemos parte de uma luta única. Estão tentando implementar o mercado de carbono, uma outra conta que não fecha para nós indígenas.
So it's important to know that we are together in our own fight. For example, the carbon trading, carbon market is something that's really not good.
Porque enquanto a gente não tirar governos que violam os nossos direitos e nossos corpos, isso não vai mudar no mundo.
Because why we don't take out these governments that violate our rights, this will not change.
Então podemos juntar as nossas forças e mudar esse mundo que só depende de nós.
So we can put our strength, our fight together, so we can make this change in our communities.
You were mentioning reality that many indigenous environmental defenders experience, and those are the threats and the murder of indigenous leaders and environmental defenders. And I wanted to ask you, Helena, if you could share about the risks that indigenous land defenders like Maria Tan, who is in this photo, face for defending their land and rights.
Yeah, I think that is something that, Latin America, South America is one of the most dangerous places for land defenders and for indigenous people. And Brazil is the country where most indigenous leaders are murdered every year. Every day and every year. So these are really hard and sad statistics and realities, because this is something that affects people directly, people like Eriki and other indigenous leaders that we have here. And I think, we talk about this violence, and you actually say this a lot. You say, we have the experience of indigenous people, but then there's also the experience of indigenous women. And indigenous women and indigenous women defenders are disproportionately much more violent and affected by when the industries come in, when the government tries to come into our territories. We've heard stories of our own community where young girls, where there were attempts of rape of young girls in our communities, and that this happened 20 years ago in our community, but this continues to happen in other communities around us. Whether it's oil, whether it's mining, it's logging, it's the agro industry, this happens every time. So these industries are not just a threat, to the environment and to the climate. It's directly a threat to our own bodies, the young girls in our communities, the women defenders in our communities, but also to those who say stop, to those who say no, you're not allowed to touch these young girls, you're not allowed to touch these people in my community. Those instead, have the risks of having their life taken away from them.
Yeah, that's a reality. By the day, indigenous people are being threatened, raped, murdered, disappeared, incarcerated. And I was saying that more than 85% of the world's biodiversity is on indigenous land. But did you know that most of that is actually under the custodianship of indigenous women? Because indigenous women often have a close and intimate relationship with the land through planting, sowing, harvesting, taking care of the seeds, transmitting that knowledge to the younger generations, singing the songs to the earth. And that is almost never recognized or acknowledged. Indigenous women are holding the world on their shoulders. For all of you, and your future generations. So from now on, I ask you and I invite you to acknowledge and recognize the role of indigenous people, of indigenous women, and to take action here, locally, or wherever you are from in the world, to support and stand in solidarity with indigenous people. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much, Eriki, Leo, Elena, Sara. I know it's a big effort, and I know that you speak from your stories and your pain and your trauma and the violence that you have lived through, and I want to acknowledge that, and I want all of you to acknowledge and respect that, because our stories are painful. It comes from trauma, but we share it with the hope that maybe someone will listen, be inspired to take action. Thank you so much. The program is continuing, just so you all know. The program is still continuing.
Well, a very powerful message, ett starkt budskap som de skickar till oss, de unga. Vi ska gå vidare i programmet. Och det gör vi med lite musik och tal. Jag tror att det är, du ska säga någonting också, har jag förstått.
Kanske inte så mycket.
Kanske inte prata så mycket.
Kanske inte prata så mycket.
Nej, det är bra att prata fort på micken igång. Alltså. Men vi har i alla fall med oss Anders Hellström, riksspelman, som är här. Och vi har också med oss Nick Mark som ska sjunga. Alltså, nu hörs du.
Se Boris Puatin och Boris. Mon nama on Nick Märak. Jag är Johanna Märakan-Neeta, eller Johan Märaksdotter. Jag är Maxida, jag till Mimmi i Etne. Jag är mamma till Maxida och till Mimmi och Holger. Och sen har jag ett barnbarn, Nike Sona, Men vi tänkte börja med, I will start with a song in Swedish. Because it goes so well. Because my grandchild, Nike Sona, it's her land, Gallok. It's where her reindeers walk. She belongs to the Jokokaska Sami. And her future, we don't know anything about it. And if they take her land, they have to fight with me first. And this song, this is Annas visa, were written in the 70s when they started to take our forests. And then they take our water. And it's the same people, the same villages where I and Sara Elvira come from. It's the same, and our elder, they still remember this. And this was made for Anna, who was one of the last person staying in the forest and saying no to SCA when they wanted to take all the forest down. And it's so sad that it's still, we still have to sing it, but now for Gallok. Det var den mörkaste natt när vi slog upp våra ögon. Det klara ljuset och månens skära stigades bort och orkade aldrig kasta över snön den minsta gnista att tända vår vilja till kamp. Ett rövargäng förgiftade oss, sövde oss ner och läste den sagan som berättar om starka och svaga. De svaga är fattiga, de starka rika. På så sätt fördelas det lika. Våran fjällvärld försvinner, blir de arbetslösa färre. Om våra renar inte mera vandrar den svarta korpen med de klangfulla ropen äger större rätt till älven och skogen än den svarta rövarhopen. tror om hösten i det röda valvet när morgonen gryr. Ska vi bygga vår smedja, ska vi svärden smida i vår strandal? Ska ingen vita, nu tändes vår vilja till kamp.
My people, we joik. And this is actually more for ourselves. And we don't need an audience or we don't need a stage. This is coming from our hearts. And this is my Nikesuna, my grandchild. sorry. You are the hope. And we have to try to carry you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mikmerk och Anders Hellström. So, Alex, what is happening? What are we gonna do? Okej. Ja, okej. Ja, det är något som är så poppis nu för tiden, det är att köra quiz. Och då ska vi göra det även i lite mer sådana här seriösa sammanhang. So, something that has become more and more popular is quiz. And we're gonna do so even in this more serious context. So, for those of you who feel like it, open your web browser, go out on the internet and get onto www.menti.com. And when you get to menti.com, you use the code that you can see on the top right, the far right up there. So menti.com and use the code and you will have a couple of questions to answer. It's really bad. Okay. You could try the Etnografiska, which is a free Wi-Fi, but that would probably crash as well if all of us try to do that. I mean, but try it. Etnografiska is an open Wi-Fi for everyone, so try it. We'll see. So Alex, what do you want? Do you want them to talk amongst themselves, or do you want them to send in answers to this?
Yeah, you just write, when you enter the code, you can just write what you think we can do. So that Sweden respects indigenous rights.
I'm going to try this to see that everything works. Let's see.
And when you answer, it will pop up on the screen. See? Email politicians. There are a few QR codes to doing just that scattered around here. Vote. Say Gallup. Demonstrate. Pressure the government. Conscious consumption. ILO 169. Shame Sweden internationally. Okay. Vote green. Pressure the government. Ja, ILO 169. Civil disobedience, so it's a good one. This is an election year also. Before you vote for who you usually vote for, and maybe pressure them first to earn your vote. Unconditional respect. Very good. We have one more question. What will you take with you from this evening's event?
Nice. Inspiration, togetherness, knowledge. Well, that's good enough. New power. Love to Mother Earth. Open eyes and mind. Responsibility to act. Yes, we all have responsibility to act, of course.
Great. We have one more last thing that we want to do, and thank you a lot for all the words you sent in. Let me just quickly take away this.
We were going to say, well, while you do that, Alex, that we were supposed to show a film produced by Nina, but since we're short of time, we won't be able to show it tonight, but it is on internet. It's called The Return, and you can watch it on the internet. It's free to watch there. The Return it's called, and it gives a very good insight in the life of the Quichuas in the Ecuadorian Amazon. And this particular film focuses on what happens during the COVID pandemic, but it also gives a good insight in their thoughts and their ways of life and how they are looking at our lives and how we should live in coexistence with nature. All right, Alex.
So we've heard a lot from indigenous voices this evening, which is amazing. But there's some indigenous voices that we have not heard from, and it's the voices that are no longer here. And Olivia Arevalo Lomas was one such voice. She's a very wise indigenous elder. She's from the Shipibo-Conibo community in the Ucayali region in what's known as the Peruvian Amazon. And she was very important for her community as a keeper of their wisdom and traditions, and also a very powerful force when it came to fighting for her territories. And she was murdered in 2018, like so many earth defenders. And I've met her a few times, and I want to close this event by playing one of her songs. And I want to do that because not even when she leaves this world will we allow the industrial exploitation machine to silence their voices.
Me, oh,
thank you, Alex, and I would like to, well, come on stage. I would like to thank you and Amazon Watch Sweden for making this arrangement, having this event finally taking place. Thank you very much for the very important work that you do. What is up next for Amazon Watch Sweden?
Just keep fighting this fight and helping indigenous people raise their voices, especially here in the West, where all the important decisions are made about their lives. We want to make them make those choices themselves.
We've been given a lot of advice and suggestions to what we can do in order to help. And of course, your organization is also here to help. So in the ways we can, we're supposed to support you, of course. What is the greatest way to support you, do you think?
You can be a volunteer, you can share anything we write in social media, spread the message, you can donate, or go to our website. There's many things you can do. And the more people speak about indigenous rights, eventually the more rights they'll get, because I remember many years ago it wasn't a thing people spoke about as much as they do now. So it's moving in the right direction.
Good. I just wish that we listen more to the indigenous peoples, because of the knowledge that they have and being aware of us since the dawn of mankind is supposed to be spread, and we're talking more about it. So I hope that it will be more well known, more respected, and also that we listen to science, of course, because science has proven the same thing, and we need to do all we can in order to save our home. I would like to say that also we had a photographer here tonight who has been taking photos. If there's someone who does not want to be on any images, please let him know, and we will withdraw you from the images. I think it's going to be mainly from the people who've been on stage here tonight. So that's important to say. And then how do you want to finish this, Alex?
Yes, Nina.
You need a microphone, of course, even if you have a strong voice, Nina.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and I hope that you have received our words and our message with open hearts. I also know that there are some very powerful Indigenous leaders in the audience, and I would like all of the Indigenous leaders and allies and Indigenous relatives to stand up. Can you please stand up, Carmen, Patricio, I don't know all the names, but there are Indigenous people here from across the world, and I just want to honor the work that you do as well. So thank you for being here, thank you for listening, and thank you for joining. Yes, I just wanted to honor their presence. So.